They've got you exactly where they want you, reacting. Every word you read, every gesture you see, every attack disguised as an opinion is designed for the same thing, to pull you off center. Because in a world that rewards speed, calm is suspicious. If you don't shout, if you don't react, if you don't strike back with fire, they think you don't exist. But let me tell you something. That calm, which so unsettles, is more dangerous than 1,000 sharpened words. Because calm, well used, is not weakness, it's strategy. You've spent your whole life believing that the strongest person is the one who dominates the conversation, the one who interrupts, who imposes, who shouts, wins. But that's just theater. True power never makes noise. Observe, listen, wait, not out of fear, but out of vision. In the art of psychological warfare, silence is a weapon, not to avoid conflict, but to control it. Picture this, a room full of voices, all raised, all defending their truth with veins bulging, and you, in the middle of it, silent, motionless, watching, and one by one they start to squirm, because they don't understand, because their emotional script needs a response from you. It needs you to lose it, to step into their battlefield, but you don't. You observe. And in that instant, power changes hands. The one who doesn't get upset is the one who commands. Machiavelli knew it. What frightens is not the punch, but the one who restrains it. What imposes is not the threat, but the certainty that, if you wanted to, you could destroy. But you don't, because you don't need to. And that self-control, that surgical coldness, makes those who only know brute force tremble, because they feed on chaos. But you don't. You are different. They expect conflict to destroy you, and you use it as a stage, as a mirror, not to see the other, but to see how far you've come. Because every provocation is a test, not of your strength, but of your axis, of your ability to remain whole in the eye of the storm. And yes, that terrifies, because it's uncommon, because most need to react to feel alive. And you no longer need that. Think of this. When someone attacks you, they're not looking to defeat you. They're looking to control you. They want to see how far their power over you goes. And if you react from the wound, from the ego, from that need to be right, they've already got you. Because the one who reacts first loses, always. The one who breaks down, the one who falls apart emotionally is exposed. Their blind spot, their open wound is laid bare. But the one who stands firm, that one imposes. Not with words, not with arguments, with presence. With a gaze that needs no justification. With a silence that cuts. And because well-used silence is not empty, it is a brutal affirmation. It is saying, I see you, without needing to speak. And that, psychologically, is devastating for someone who constantly needs validation. The real war doesn't happen in debates. It happens in looks, in gestures, in pauses. The one who controls the emotional rhythm of a situation controls the conflict. So don't act from emotion. Act from vision, from the cold understanding that the other only projects. That what they say about you actually speaks of them. And if you understand that, if you see it without judgment, you can move the pieces calmly, without needing to justify yourself, without needing to respond to every blow, because you're not playing that game anymore. True power doesn't shout, it does not impose, it sustains, like a column, like a lighthouse, in the midst of chaos, in the midst of attack, in the midst of the other's emotional urgency, and that is not forgotten. No one remembers the person who won an argument. Everyone remembers the one who never lost their center. And here's the trick. Don't avoid conflict. Transform it. Don't flee from attack. Observe it, because hidden within it is a truth. How prepared you are to not depend on reaction. How strong you are when you can't control the external, but you can control the internal. That is emotional mastery. That is strategy. When you learn not to react, you reach a new level, because you understand that not everything deserves a response, that there are attacks you defeat simply by not existing, that there are conflicts you win with a serene smile, and there are people who should never have access to your emotions, because they don't understand them, because they don't value them, because they only want to use them as a weapon. Remember this: the one who upsets you, controls you, the one who manages to pull you off your center has already beaten you. They need no more, and you have given them everything: your peace, your focus, your clarity. So every time you feel the urge to reply, to explain, to defend yourself, stop, breathe, look them in the eyes, and say, with your body, "You will not enter here." That is the true wall, not the one built with insults, but the one erected with presence. And here's something few understand. When you remain calm, the other is forced to look at themselves, and that they don't like, because they can no longer project their frustration onto you, because they can no longer make you their mirror. And then they crack, because silence disarms, because self-control wounds, because serenity hurts more than any word. The true battle is in the mind, not outside, and whoever wins that battle wins everything else. But there is a price, the loneliness of the one who does not react, because the world expects you to, because they want you shouting, explaining yourself, breaking down, and when you don't, they leave, because they cannot handle you, because they don't know what to do with someone who doesn't play their game. And there lies your advantage. You're not here to fight, you're here to lead. You're not here to react, you're here to remain. Because in the end, those who really leave a mark are not the ones who shouted the loudest, but the ones who, in silence, changed the course of everything, without warning, without permission, without breaking anything, just by standing firm. And that, not just anyone can do it. And now listen carefully, because what comes next is even more uncomfortable to accept. Most people in conflict are not seeking truth nor justice. They seek to win it. They don't seek understanding. They seek validation. They don't care whether you are right. They care that they don't lose ground. And that turns every conversation into a silent war of fragile egos, because the ego, that one cannot stand silence. Silence dismantles it, humiliates it, exposes it. But you can't live from the ego, because the ego is always at war, always seeking the last word, the final victory, the last applause. And living from the ego is living on the edge of emotional collapse. One misplaced comment is enough to bring you down. One indifferent look is enough for you to take it as an attack. That is the invisible prison, not being able to be at peace unless everything is in your favor. Meanwhile, the one who masters their emotions watches how others wear themselves out, watches how collective anxiety disguises itself as opinion, watches how fear of the void drives the masses to speak without thinking, to attack without understanding, to react without breathing, because nobody wants to feel they've lost. Nobody wants to feel the other has control. And that's where you step in, not to prove you're better, but to show you don't need to prove anything. Look around you. Everything is designed to speed up your mind, to make you react. Notifications, headlines, comments, gestures, rumors. Everything competes for one thing: your attention. Because whoever controls your attention controls your emotional state. And whoever controls your emotional state holds the keys to your life. Do you see now why calm is power? Because it's the last territory you have. The only one they can't take from you unless you give it away. Serenity is not indifference. It's the smartest form of resistance. You're not ignoring what's going on. You're seeing it from a place where chaos has no reach, from a psychological height few ever attain. And that unsettles, irritates, offends, because it forces the other to face their own hysteria, because it reminds them there is another way to be, a way that doesn't require proving, reacting, or avenging. And here comes the nasty part. When you master calm, you become unpredictable, and that terrifies, because the world has learned to anticipate the reaction of the impulsive, the reactive, the weak. But they don't know what to do with you. They don't know if you'll speak, if you'll act, if you'll disappear. They don't know if you'll attack, or simply hold their gaze. And in that doubt, in that ambiguity, their strategy collapses, because they can't control what they don't understand. And you, by ceasing to react, become an enigma. You become dangerous. Do you realize how powerful that is? The one who remains silent controls the emotional tempo, is the invisible director of the scene. While everyone acts, you decide when the curtain falls, and that is leadership. Not the one who shouts the loudest, not the one who imposes by fear, but the one who inspires respect with a single presence, with a single decision not to be ruffled. And then the next level arrives, turning conflict into a training ground, because you no longer see it as a threat. You see it as an opportunity to observe yourself. Which part of you feels uneasy? Which part of you wants to respond, shout, flee? That is the part you haven't yet mastered. And conflict shows it to you with brutal clarity. There, right there, is the work. Not in winning, not in convincing, in observing, in taking note, in growing from within, because that is the key, turning conflict into information, into a mirror, into possibility, not into punishment, not into drama. And when you do that, conflict stops affecting you. It no longer hurts, it no longer scares, because you have transformed it into a tool for evolution. While the other consumes themselves in the need to be right, you are leveling up, in silence, in calm, without anyone noticing. And that is the paradox. The firmer you are in your center, the freer you become, because you no longer depend on how they look at you, nor on what they say, nor on what they expect from you. And in that freedom there is a beauty that disarms, because it cannot be corrupted, because it cannot be bought, because it cannot be manipulated. It is a force that is born from deep within, from clarity, from connection with yourself. So don't be mistaken. The one who shouts loses. The one who needs attention loses. The one who reacts loses. And the one who stands firm, the one who breathes, the one who observes, that one transforms, not because they want to control the other. And now that you've made it this far, I have to tell you something many won't understand, but you will. Because if you have endured without looking away, if you have reached this part of the video without closing the tab, without moving on to the next thing, it's because something inside you has already awoken. Something clicked. And it's not just anything. It's a truth that had been germinating for a while. A suspicion you'd been carrying in silence. And now it's become sharp. You are not here to react. You are here to redefine what power means, redefine what respect means to you, redefine the idea of success, of strength, of victory. Because if something is clear after everything we've talked about, it's this. The one who keeps their axis in the midst of someone else's collapse isn't a bystander. They're an architect, a strategist, a long-game player, and that changes you. It changes you from within, because you no longer want to be in every discussion, nor win every debate, nor have the last word. You want something else. You want impact. But a silent impact. Invisible. Lethal. You want to be that presence that enters a room and without saying a word makes everyone straighten their posture. That person who doesn't need to speak to be heard, who doesn't need to justify their decision because their very firm resolve validates it. And listen well, this world isn't designed for the steadfast. It's designed for those who break quickly, for those who give in, for those who need to belong, for those who sell their center for a hit of approval. But you cannot go back there, not after this, not after seeing yourself from the outside, not after understanding that mastery of yourself is the weapon nobody expects. And that's why it works. And now comes the important part, because this video isn't just for listening, it's for deciding, because knowing isn't enough. You know it, many know, but few act, few train, few dare to walk calmly while the world burns. Few are willing to pay the price of silence. The question is, will you be one of those few? If your answer is yes, I want you to write it below in the comments. But don't write just anything. Write a single phrase. I do not react, I govern. That way, anyone who enters this video will know immediately who is awake and who remains trapped in the noise. And if this stirred something inside you, if you feel that every word resonated in that place where you keep your true self, then don't miss what's coming next. Subscribe, because we don't make content. We make psychological training. We don't talk to fill minutes. We talk to reprogram consciences, to give you tools that cut like scalpels. So if you want more of this, you know what you have to do. And before I go, I want to leave you with an image. Imagine yourself entering a room full of noise, chaos, conflict, everyone talking, everyone trying to stand out, and you walking slowly in silence, with no need to impose yourself, with no need to prove anything. And in that moment, the world falls silent. Not because you shout, but because something in you, something unbreakable, reminds them there are levels they cannot reach. Until next time, and remember, do not break, do not react, do not explain. Govern. Goodbye, architect of silence. See you in the shadow of the next conflict. Or maybe you're already there.